everyone! This video is going to go through the 5B grammar exercise answers, so here we go. Okay, so A on 230 is as follows. So here we have a for a ut construction with the subjunctive down here. So Catiline announced, perfect tense, to his companions in the dative that it would be that for a ut fire incendium ad caedes, fire and slaughter would happen in the city. So he announced that fire and slaughter would be in the city, but with for a ut and furent, you could do would be that there would be fire, however you want to do it. Okay, moving on to B. So we have umbrenus, and then we have a quo, and then a comparative here, so we know this must be the quo purpose clause. So umbrenus called Gabinius, we'll call it Gabinium, so that, quo plus the comparative, so that more easily, Facilius, he might persuade the Allobroges with his words. So Allobrogibus is dative because persuadeo takes the dative. Suadeo means sweeten, so you sweeten something for someone in the dative is how I remember it. So Brennus called Gabinius so that he might more easily persuade the Allobroges with his words. Ablative of means. Verbis suis. Okay, letter C, we have Allobroges, so the Allobroges were considering, considerabant in the imperfect, the thing for a long time, rem du, and then we have this nice relative clause in the middle. So if you think back to a couple chapters ago, you notice that there is a subjunctive in this relative clause, so hopefully you went back to your subjunctive in the relative clause section. If not, doesn't really matter, but just be aware that is a subjunctive and there is a reason for it. So the Allobroges, who, and then quipa means like of course or since, because, so it makes this relative clause causal. So the Allobroges, who of course were thinking, imperfect subjunctive here, that there would be for a, remember, is short for futurum esse, so it just means would be or will be. So they were thinking that there would be or will be great prizes, magna praemia, of war. So here we have a causal relative, and you would know that if, for instance, you looked back at your subjunctives with the relative clause. Quipa always sets off a causal subjunctive. If you didn't know that, you can still just translate it as a relative. So the Allobroges, who were thinking there would be great prizes of war, that's fine too. Don't worry if you don't get the causal sense. It's kind of subtle here, as opposed to a real causal clause with quod, for instance, because. But you could also translate it, the Allobroges, because they were considering that there would be great prizes of war, therefore were considering the matter for a long time. Either way, up to you, do what you feel. Okay, moving on to D. So here we have for a again, but this one's a for a ut. The last one we had was just a fora, so it was just acting as futurum esse. But here we're back to the for a ut that we would expect in this chapter. So, sed legati, but the legates, or the ambassadors, finally, tandem sincerunt, perceived or sensed, in the perfect tense, that it would be, for a ut, that they would be conquered, vincerentur, so vinco in the active is conquer, in the passive is be conquered, so that they would be conquered by the resources of the Roman state. Romani is an adjective here describing civitatis, so of the Roman state. And then facilime is most easily, it's an adverb. And remember when we were learning superlative adjectives, we learned that most superlative adjectives end in issimus, issima, issimum, but sometimes if it already ends in an R or an L, you get a doubling of that letter. So Calerimus for instance, would be the quickest, and facilimus is the easiest. And then to make it an adverb, you just add on that e. So instead of easiest, it's most easily. Last but not least from this section, we have e. So, igitur, therefore, the legati Allobrogum, so the legates of the Allobroges, or the ambassadors of the Allobroges, told neraverunt everything, omnia, neuter plural accusative, to Cicero, dative, and then another quo plus the comparative, which we know means so that in a purpose clause. So they told everything to Cicero so that they might bring ferent, not ferret, don't be confused, it's ferent, they might bring greater help, maius auxilium. Maius here is not the adverb, but instead the neuter singular comparative. So you'd have maior if it was masculine or feminine, but maius in the neuter. So they might bring greater help to their own state. Both of these are dative feminine, so even though you have an I in the third declension and an AE in the first declension, these two agree. So they bring help to their own state. Great. Okay, as far as the subjunctives from the 5b text go, they are as follows. Okay, the first one could be either of two options. So it starts with the negotium dot ut. So if you consider giving business to someone a type of indirect command, you could say indirect command for these two. Or if you don't consider it a type of indirect command, you could just say a purpose clause. He gives him the business so that he might seek them out and force them to join. Either way, up to you. Okay. Adducerentur is very clearly a fore ut, has fore ut right in the sentence, so it's just like we had in our chapter for this week. Okay, esse is a little bit more tricky. Hopefully you looked and it made sense to you, but basically here we have indirect statement, and whenever you have a subordinate clause in indirect statement, for instance, relative clause or causal clause like we have here, quod meaning because, then all of the subordinate verbs become subjunctive no matter what. So that's what's going on here. Okay, this next one also a bit tricky, but hopefully you looked at the note right above the vocabulary for 5b1, and it tells you to look at number 150 in your grammar and vocab book, or your grammar and exercises, sorry. So if you look at 150, that's the purpose clause section, so you can identify it as a relative purpose clause, because you have qua setting off this clause, a relative pronoun, and then you have the subjunctive. So it's a relative purpose here. Okay. Misererator. Yep. So that one is subjunctive because it's in an indirect command. You have orare ut setting up the clause, and orare, to beg, is a form of indirect command. So they are begging him to pity them. They are ordering him to pity them, only a slightly nicer form. So that's what's going on there. Okay, then we get to essent or factori essent if you want the full form. So that one is subjunctive, again, because we have a relative clause, a type of subordinate clause in indirect statement. We're still in indirect statement here, you can tell because all the verbs are infinitive. So quod non factori essent is relative clause in indirect statement, and therefore it is subjunctive. Okay, next set of subjunctives, we have liberarent, which is a purpose clause. So we have nihil tam difficula esse, nothing is so difficult, which they were not about to do, so that they might free the state from debt. So liberarent is free, and it is a purpose clearly because they are endeavoring to free their state from debt. In esset and persuaderet should be pretty identifiable because we've just gone through this chapter. So you have quo plus a comparative. So the first one you have quo maior, and the second one you have quo facilius for these two verbs. So that's just a quo plus comparative type of subjunctive. Same thing for this next one, the esset. you have quo plus amplior, another comparative, and then esse, so that's same quo plus comparative. Okay, last but not least, we have plicerentur. So plicerentur is, in the situation, we have persuase eis ut plicerentur operam. So he persuaded to them that they should promise their work. If you persuade someone to do something, it's a type of indirect command. So that one is another indirect command. Okay, hopefully all of that subjunctive review was helpful. If you would like more subjunctive review, or if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm very happy to help you. I love doing the subjunctive and all of the different clauses. So have a great day, and I will talk to you later.